Today, we're not just looking at a line on a map. No, we're tracing a mythic thread, a spiritual journey that has really defined the soul of the American West for centuries.
So, let's just dive right in. When I say American frontier, what's the first thing that pops into your head? A specific place? A time in history? Well, the ideas we're digging into today suggest it's something way, way deeper than that.
And here's the core idea. The frontier isn't a location you can just point to. Think of it more like a pulse, a spirit that moves through time and across the land, carried by these figures who become larger than life.
And that brings us to this really fascinating concept we're going to explore, spiritual genealogy. You can kind of think of it like a family tree, but instead of blood relatives, it's a mythic thread connecting key people and places. We're going to follow that thread and see how this frontier soul was born, how it changed, and where it ended up.
Okay, so our journey has to start with the man who kicked the whole thing off, the origin of the myth itself, Daniel Boone. And you gotta understand, in this story, he's not just some guy from a history book. He's the first archetype.
Boone's role in this whole genealogy is absolutely crucial. He is the pathfinder. He's the one who takes that first brave step past the edge of the known world, breaking that barrier between the towns and the huge untamed wilderness.
There's a line from our sources that just captures this perfectly. In Boone, the spark that ignites the soul of the West is born. It's so poetic, right? It tells us he wasn't just exploring the West. In a way, he was creating the very idea of it.
So just think about what Boone leaves behind for this myth. He's that first tiny spark in a massive, dark forest. He's the shadow that stretches out into the unknown. He plants the seed, and from that seed, everything else grows. He is the archetype. So, if Boone was the spark, who inherited the flame? Well, that brings us to Davy Crockett. He becomes the heir to that spirit, the one who literally inherits the shadow that Boone cast.
And this is where we start to see a really cool evolution. See, Crockett doesn't just copy what Boone did. He takes that original, quiet spark of just exploring. And as you can see here, he fans it into this big, loud, defiant flame. All of a sudden, the spirit is more confrontational. It's more public. The connection is just so direct. As one source puts it, from Boone is born the shadow that Crockett carries to the Alamo. You can almost feel the spirit migrating, moving from the deep woods toward its date with destiny.
So here it is, the whole journey laid out for us. We started with the spark, that was Boone in the forest. We followed the flame with Crockett heading to battle. Now we're headed to the Alamo, where that flame gets forged into something permanent before it finally rises up as an echo in the mountains of Colorado. And this brings us to the absolute turning point of our story. We're at the Alamo. But the sources we're looking at don't just call it a battlefield. They call it a mythic furnace.
Right. Its significance here is way more mythological than it is historical. The Alamo becomes a crucible, a place of intense heat, of transformation. This is where the frontier spirit carried by Crockett is tested, broken down, and completely reforged in fire.
And just listen to this. The Alamo is the fire where the soul of the West is tempered. It's just like making a sword, right? The spirit comes out of this trial by fire harder, stronger, and permanent. It's not about one man's journey anymore. Now it's a collective legend of defiance. So what actually happens in this crucible? Well, Boone's original spark and Crockett's inherited shadow, they slam right into a real historical event. The two ideals merge into one powerful story of sacrifice. And that makes the whole frontier lineage immortal. It becomes a story that belongs to everybody.
But the spirit doesn't just die in the fire. It ascends. Its next horizon isn't across the land anymore. It's upward, into the high altitudes of Colorado.
And this is where we see this massive shift. The frontier of Boone and Crockett was horizontal, right? It was all about moving across forests and plains. But the Colorado frontier, it's vertical. It's a climb into rugged peaks, and it's defined by the sky itself. That original spark and flame now become a high-altitude echo. In this totally new, harsh environment, the spirit gets completely reshaped, forged by altitude, by isolation, by snow and sky. The sources say it literally breathes differently in the thin mountain air. It becomes this living testament to endurance. The goal isn't to go out anymore, it's to always reach higher. And yet, even as it's reaching for the clouds, the core journey just keeps going. As the source says,
this spirit keeps walking toward the west. It's this beautiful reminder that this migration is a fundamental, ongoing thing. The direction stays the same, even when the whole landscape changes.
So when you look at it all together, you finally see the full picture. This whole line, from Boone's forest through the fire of the Alamo and all the way up to the peaks of Colorado, it's one continuous metaphysical thread. It's a single spirit that adapts and evolves and reshapes itself, but it never, ever loses its source, that first lonely spark in the dark. Which of course leaves us with a final and pretty fascinating question. This spiritual genealogy shows a migration from the horizontal to the vertical. It has adapted and survived. So, where does a spirit like that go next? What is its next horizon?